Welcome.
Thank you.
Coffee?
Oh yes, I have coffee for you.
Thank you.
I snuck it in. I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to bring food in
You're
here.
not. It says that. You're not allowed to talk, you're not allowed to drink, but it's okay.
We're doing both. It's okay.
Let me also record from here. Normally it does a great job on like this. Okay, these are my questions.
Okay.
Like, I eliminated my questions, and there's my introduction, and I want to read that because it's going to be like mostly sound anyway, maybe. Okay, so hi everyone interested in discovering the people who shape the cultural landscape of the city, whether they're artists or techies, please come in. They're all making waves. I have the privilege to welcome you today. I haven't been to your shows, but I hope to like see it at the end of this month. In 2 weeks. Yeah. Okay, so I want to come to the next one for sure.
Yeah.
So you're known as an innovative composer, vocalist, sound engineer, reshaping the perspective of how we interact with the sound. Could you tell us more about what you're doing with Tundra?
Yes. Well, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things to discuss, but I think as an overview, basically, I started writing music when I was 17, and I kind of created this genre. I mean, it was very dramatic. I just created a whole genre. And I called it Strange Tundra because it was very deeply thematically involved with the cold and with worlds that are specifically existing in really cold places. And I kind of imagined this like alien extraterrestrial, plausibly theoretical world that could exist, that had this vast array of alien life. And I wrote an opera that took place on this planet, and I used the music and changed it so that it atmospherically applied to the story as well. So I used ice sounds, I used vocal sounds, and I used a lot of wind. So I called it Strange Tundra because it took place in the tundra, like essentially. So I kind of built on that over time, and I created this massive opera, and then I left it behind and was like, didn't want to look at it, didn't want to share it with people because I thought it was too bizarre, it was too different, and it was like nothing I'd ever seen in a wide public place art-wise, and I just thought it would not be accepted. So I just kind of kept it to myself. I kept it hidden, and then one day I realized that art stands out because it is different, and that's what people want. People want to see something that's different. And as soon as I realized that, I was like, wow, this could be my gift to the world if that were the way things went.
When was that?
That was like the end of last year.
Okay, we will come to what triggered it and all. How do you use ice sound in it?
So I sample sounds of ice. I take samples from the internet, and I cut them up, and I also record my own voice. And I'm working on like actually recording my own ice sounds. I have not actually done that yet, but I do take a lot of samples from deep, dark, and light corners of the internet in order to add ice to my music. And I also take a lot of wind recordings. There is a very special microphone that you can use to record wind, but I don't have one, so I'm going to do that someday. But as of right now, I use samples that I find, and I cut them up, and I create percussion out of them, and I create atmospheres out of them, and I just add them to the music. And you can't really point it out all the time. Like, you can't always tell that that's what it is. And ice makes a lot of really interesting sounds that you wouldn't really expect. So when you hear the music, you can't always really tell that you're hearing ice. You can hear the wind for sure, but most of the music, it's just like it sounds very atmospheric and drony, but oftentimes when you hear it, you're not just like, that's ice right there, that's this sound. It's very concealed and confusing. And I've been kind of like changing how I compose and making new pieces of music where it's like I use a very specific poignant sound of ice, for example, and then market it to people as like, this is the sound that I used, listen for it, so that it's like a different listening experience because you're waiting for it, you're looking for it. So yeah, there's a bunch of different modes that I use it in.
So are you a San Francisco native, and could you share more about your immersive extraterrestrial art show and the unique alien party at the Catacombs? So like the visuals too, could you like tell us what we see when we're there?
Yeah. So it's not in Catacombs, which is a widely confusing thing. No, it's not like in the Catacombs or in the cave.
Do we even have Catacombs?
No.
No. But why is the place called Catacombs?
Well, I mean, the story goes, so I used to live at this place called the Convent, which was like this crazy art house that was in Lower Haight. And it kind of defined my expressive phase as an artist, my expressive era. I was always like a creator that dwelled in my room and created music alone when no one was watching and just like shared it on the internet and was very shy about it. But then as soon as I went to the convent, I suddenly was surrounded by really expressive people. And they also happened to be artists. So I kind of like through contact high emerged as another expressive person, and I got into performance and I got into like being loud and screaming, and my voice changed, and I used to have a very like soft and windy and simple, quiet kind of singing voice, and then suddenly my voice just like exploded and I became like this very loud and expressive vocalist. So like the convent was a very key era to my upbringing as an artist. And the word catacombs came when we were writing music there. So I wrote a lot of music there because I'm a music producer, and that's just like what I do. That's what I know how to do. So I would frequently just invite people to write music with me, and I'd have music writing sessions in the basement, and I had like my whole mixing set up. And I would I would give someone a microphone and be like, record something, like just like listen to what I just wrote, this little thing, this little melody, and record something over it. And they're like maybe a guitarist or a vocalist or a drum machine player or something, and they would record something over it. And we made a lot of music like that. Like I have like a lot of projects just from that specific method. And I decided later to go back and master them and collect them and then release an album. But there was this one word that I said while we were writing the music, and I was like, I think this album is going to be called Catacombs. And the reason that I said that was because it kind of sounded like the word convent, and it was like very close to the convent in a lot of ways, because the convent was like very kind of spooky and creepy. It was dark, and it was like this weird old church, and like thematically it was really, the word just like really meant a lot to the word catacombs. Like it really was closely related to the convent. It just kind of represented the convent. It might as well have been a word that meant convent, that was just like allegorical or obscure or something. So like I named this album Catacombs, which was all the music that we wrote at the convent. And then when I did the first Catacombs event, that was the release date for the album. Okay. So I just called it the same thing.
So it's not confusing.
Yeah, I just called it the same thing. I was like, Catacombs, we're releasing an album, and it means convent, and it's like, why don't we just call the event Catacombs? Okay. And then after that, when I started to realize that this event could be much bigger, it could be something that we do multiple times, and it could mean something much greater, I was just like, why not just keep it the same name? Why don't we just do a bunch of Catacombs? And over time, the word stuck because it does kind of apply to a lot of themes that we hold at Catacombs. One is that we like to prioritize underground artists.
Who is we?
Catacombs, as in like me and the people who end up throwing it with me. Like we're still figuring out who's on board every single time, but we really just go event by event. So it hasn't been the same every time, but I'm always on it because I started it. But it works for the theme for Catacombs because we like to prioritize underground art, and Catacombs are like underground, so it's very literal that way. But also it's supposed to be like it's surrounding alienism and extraterrestrial art, and that can be interpreted, like whenever we go to our artists, that can be interpreted literally, as in like they actually make art that appears like it's from Avatar, or from like an extraterrestrial sort of landscape or approach, or it can just be something that's really different, because like alien as a word can also just mean different.
Yeah, I had like question specific about that, because it's like, what's artistic philosophy behind it? Like, what is the like alienverse, exploring the unknown? Mm-hmm. What's like shaping your message? Is it like otherness, like alienation? We all know as a word, like so yeah. I know, but like, what do you wanna like? Also, what's your philosophical message behind that?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, the theme came. It's evolved to mean that we just want to bring artists who are not in the limelight and bring them to the limelight and show normalize creating art that is really different, because I feel like in our society, I mean, this could just be a personal experience, this was my experience, that in our society, we glorify art that is the same as the stuff that is already popular, and we kind of hear the same things over and over on the radio and in movies. Like, we, as humans, we tend to copy what works, and we just do it again, but through embracing art that is really different and does not follow any norm, we can inspire innovation, we can inspire new ideas to come faster, we can get more comfortable trying new things. So like from an artistic perspective, we want to show art that is different so that we can inspire artists to be different and like progress art as a medium, as a dance faster. So for me, when I started with that idea, that was just because I had made some really weird shit and I felt scared to show it to people, because I believed that this world was like designed for artists who have something that's expected and have something that is like everyone's already seen. So by creating this event, I created a place where not only I could show my art that I thought was a little bit too weird, and also inspire other people to show their experimental work. And like, this was just kind of like a guess. I didn't really know that a lot of artists had like really experimental work because I hadn't seen it. I usually only see the stuff that they want people to see. But as soon as I started asking the people that I knew who were performers or creators or visual artists, do you have anything weird or experimental that you don't show anyone? Do you have anything that no one's ever seen that's like, that's maybe very different? And because that's the theme of Catacombs. And they would immediately, like, their eyes would light up and they'd just be like, yes, I do. I didn't know that anyone wanted to see it. Let me go find it and see what you think. So as soon as like I started seeing a couple of people do that, it really like got the ball rolling, and I realized that this is a real place that we can host a lot of common themes among artists that they can all apply their work to.
So are you Bay Area native?
Yes, I was born in San Francisco, and I grew up over like several periods in this area, and then I moved to Oregon, I moved to Utah, I moved to San Diego. Like, I moved around a lot.
What made you come back?
Well, this was when I was a kid. This was like when I was very young. I most recently before San Francisco, I was living in Novato, and then I just felt this, like, I felt this call to San Francisco. I don't know why, but really, like, the thing that physically brought me here is that I was an organist, and I wanted to learn to play the organ on a really beautiful, massive organ. And the most beautiful organs are in San Francisco. Like, I searched all over the Bay Area, and the biggest organs are, of course, always in big cities, because that's where the cathedrals are, that's where the churches are. And like, historically, my music is deeply rooted in organs, because that was like my first real instrument that I composed with. I composed a lot of organ music, like, way back when, and I was also a pianist. But I wanted to find an organ teacher, and San Francisco was the place to do that. And I went to Grace Cathedral, and I went to St. Mary's of the Assumption, and I played both of their organs and met their organists. And the St. Mary's of the Assumption was the organist, Chris, who was willing to teach me and willing to let me play there. So that's what brought me to San Francisco. I was practicing the organ at St. Mary's of the Assumption every Wednesday. And then I started going to sound baths, because I found out that Grace Cathedral had these things called sound baths, and I'd never heard of them, because, I went there to play their organ. And finding sound baths, I then found the center, because the center has a bunch of sound baths, and then I found the convent, and then I moved in, and like, it just kind of flowered from there, and I started making friends. And like, really, this was not planned at all.
And all this started like around 3 years ago.
This was like 2022. Yeah, this was like beginning of 2022. Yeah.
Well, everything seems to.
It happened really fast. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long have you been engaged in music and performance art? I know you said like at 17, but that's the first music production, composing. Before that, like all those piano and like learning instruments.
Yeah. I've been singing my whole life. I've been writing music for as long as I can remember, but I just didn't know how to write it down except to write lyrics and memorize it. But as soon as I discovered GarageBand, like, I had used it before, I kind of knew about it, but then one day I just like really felt this urge to write this one specific song down, and I couldn't think of a way to do it except to just record my voice. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to record my voice singing and see what happens, and just like use it as a way to copy it down so that I can show a music producer and have them write it down for me. Like, that was the whole idea. Like, back then, and this kind of was how it was, that you couldn't just produce your own music. You had to go to school for it. You had to learn to be a music production professional and an audio engineer for like 20 years before you could get to the point of writing your own stuff, high quality and professional level. And you really, if you hadn't done that yet, you had to just find a music producer and convince them to like let you collaborate with them in a sort of way. And like, you would have to record instruments and you had to do all these things. But now it's so much simpler because there's MIDI and there's Ableton, there's all kinds of stuff. You could do it all by yourself. No one else is necessary. But at the time, I was using GarageBand just to kind of record what I had so I could show it to a music producer so that I like had a version of it that they could hear. And I ended up I didn't even know that you could do MIDI, which is like, I don't know if you're familiar with audio engineering, but so it's like when you have a MIDI keyboard, which is just like a tiny little piano that plugs into your computer.
Are those like squares?
Yeah, it's like this big. It's like the size of a little laptop. And basically you can plug in any instrument to it, and when you press the C, it'll be the C note of a trumpet, and then you change it, and then it's a violin, and then it's like a synthesizer, or like literally anything you can imagine.
So if you play one instrument,
it makes the whole keyboard that instrument.
Okay, so you play the instrument with the keyboard. Okay, it's not like you play a guitar and then like you switch the guitar's tone to any other instrument.
No,
okay.
Yeah.
My best friend has it. We're like moving in together, and like he will have like a studio in the room next door. So yeah. I'll play.
Well, I didn't have any instruments. I just had MIDI, which is like, it's basically, I mean, it's very professionally recorded instruments, but it does sound a little bit false, a little bit faux, but it can be very easily manipulated to, if you know how to do it right, you can make it sound really good. But anyways, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't even know that MIDI was a thing, and I just recorded my voice and ended up imitating chords with my voice by layering them. And it just kind of expanded and expanded. I was like, wow, I didn't know that I could go this far with this. Like, you can do so much with just vocal recordings. And I wrote like 10 songs. And then I went to my music producer, or this person I happen to know who like might produce it for me. And I showed it to them, and we didn't actually, like, while they were helping me kind of work out one song, I discovered MIDI. And I was like, wow, I did not even know this was a thing. And then I decided to go back through all of the songs and rewrite them using MIDI and like actually try to write them myself. And that process ended up taking 3 years, and I ended up with a 7-hour opera at the end of it. So I went very slowly going through each song and rewriting it.
Didn't you publish something new?
Like, I published a lot of things. Which one?
The one like you posted, you were like, I accidentally published the whole album.
Oh yeah.
What did you do? Like,
yeah, I still don't even know what happened. I think maybe like the date was wrong on SoundCloud or something. I don't know. But that is the album for the opera music, the live show. So there's a bunch of different versions. There's like the original music that I wrote years ago that I just mastered, and then there's the stuff that I edited specifically for the show and added narration to it. That one, and then there's also that without the narration. So I accidentally released the one without narration, and then like pulled it back really fast. So, so that one is not out yet technically. I mean, there's like a couple hundred people who've listened to it, but I don't think that's the end of the world.
Who comes to watch it? Like, to see how does the audience perceive it? What are the feedbacks so far? What was the differences between the events that you made? Like, what changed? Who came? And what were their feedback?
Well, I did get some feedback, so I don't get a whole lot of people giving me feedback, which is something I kind of don't like, because I want people to tell me what they think. I want it to be as best as it can be. But the little feedback I did get is that like we had an opening narration, and I thought it was too long, and I said that to someone. I was like, I thought it was too long. What did you think? And they're like, yeah, I thought it was a little too long. I thought it could be like cut in half. So that was one feedback. And another thing was that someone suggested that the words, because there's a lot of narration in the opera, someone suggested that we have words on a projection screen behind the dancers so you can follow it more easily as opposed to listening. So that's another thing we can do. And then there were a couple other things that people like on our core team kind of said. And one was like we should have a rehearsal that's much earlier. So like just little things like that. But overall, like a lot of the feedback has just come from me and my core team. But as for people who attend, it really depends on where we do it. So the last one, we had a lot of people who, I mean, this is just what I kind of perceived. I didn't like go around and ask everyone how they found out. It was maybe like half people that I knew and invited personally, and then mutuals. And then we also had an email list that we had access to at our venue, and they emailed like 500 people, and a lot of people from that showed up. So I think it was just like people who tend to attend events that are like fashion shows or experimental art events or just parties, because that was the type of venue that we were at. So it was like half people like that, and then the rest were people that I had invited personally that I either knew or who I just met on the street or something. So it was that was basically like our audience.
And the artists that you went and asked if they have anything that they didn't show to anyone yet, did you include them anyhow in these events, or?
Oh, the artists that, oh yes.
The other underground artists.
Right. So we've only done 3 Catacombs, and I actually started asking people that after the last one. Mm-hmm. So those people the people that I mentioned, there hasn't been an event since I asked them. So for the coming up one, we might have some people, most likely. But for the last one, it was more just people that I knew who were going to fit the theme, and then I kind of put the pieces together later that this could be like a really great way to show really experimental art.
How would you include them in a show that is like opera? Like if they are doing something totally irrelevant, how would you include them? Have you given it a thought?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically the opera is only 30 minutes. It goes for the first 30 minutes of the show. The rest of the event, there's like several hours after that. We have art on the walls. There's a lot of visual artists who show their pieces in paintings and hang them on the walls and sell them possibly. And there's also vendors who are set up throughout the event. They show their work, they show their creations. And then also music performers. So we have DJ sets and music performers like all after the opera for several hours. So if they're a musical performer and they're an experimental music performer, then they'd go after the opera, and that's like a dancing experience. And then if they're a visual artist, then they can display their art in other places. But really the opera is not like the whole event. It's like the first 30 minutes of it, and then the rest of the event is just a collaborative art show.
What does the narration tell before the opera, or like during?
For the beginning of the opera?
Yeah, the beginning. The one you thought was too long. I was like, what's it about?
Well, it tells the backstory because the whole opera is based on a novel that I wrote.
You wrote.
So yeah.
Amazing.
So I kind of just had to consolidate a lot of information into one short narration piece, and then because a lot of the story is like it makes a lot more sense and it's much more intense to experience if you understand the backstory. So I wanted to create like this little narrative piece before the show goes on to just describe what the story is about. And then the rest of the narration that goes throughout the opera, because the whole opera is like this narrated piece and there's music behind it. Originally the narration wasn't there, it was just the music, but I realized that like it's really hard to tell the story, to receive the story unless you have it spoken to you. So I added a lot of narration over it, and that's just telling what's happening. That's just like it shows, it's kind of like a combination of vocals and singing through telling, and then also just narration through telling. For example, there's this one scene when the main character, she's just gone outside for the first time in her life, and she gets lost in the forest, and she's like she's trying to find her way home and she almost dies doing it, and she's just lost and she's just like trying to find her way back. So in the narration, I say something like that. I say like she's lost, she's confused, she doesn't know where she is, she doesn't know when she's going to get back, and then she finally sees her home in the distance and she runs to it, or something like that. So I kind of just described the story because I couldn't really think of another way to do it.
Did you publish that novel?
The novel?
Yeah.
Not yet. No, I still have it. I'm waiting for the proper moment. I think that because I have a series of albums coming out this year, and I think that once the moment feels right, I'll do it. I think I want to release a lot of the music first and do a couple iterations of the opera first, and then show people the novel, because then it'll make a lot more sense. And yeah, I don't know. I'm still waiting for the right moment.
You can self-publish.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
I'm also like writing some many things. Anyway, so what are the adaptations you implemented from one event to another? I already asked, but like, so what aspirations do you harbor for the future of these events? Like, how long do you want to continue anyway? Like,
how long do I want it?
Yeah, doing like Catacombs, like.
Well, honestly, I get a lot of reward out of rising other artists to a place of being seen when they have something that's really different. So like this very specific action that I've like endeavored in doing is like really something I'm very passionate about. So I can't say how long it's gonna go. I can't say, but honestly, I would like it to go for a long time. I did actually get the liberty of someone asking me what it would look like if it were scaled, and because they were trying to convince me to get a VC involved and to get some funding for it, and I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. That sounds great. You know, getting money for this project would only be a good thing. But then they started asking me questions about like how it could be scalable. And that's when I realized I don't want it to be scaled. I don't want this to be like a McDonald's or something. I mean, that's like the biggest version of scaling something, but I don't ever want it to get that big. I want it to always be a small community-based thing. I don't want it to be Burning Man. I don't want it to be a festival. You know, no, it would turn into something completely different. And I wouldn't want to be a part of it at that point. I only want it to be something that's always small, always a small team, always DIY. And like we have sponsors maybe if there are people that we can find, but
not VC.
But I never want it to be something where it's like they suddenly they're like the finger of God and they suddenly have to point at things and make it different, tell us what to do. And,
even pick the artists maybe after
yeah, exactly, yeah. So I always want it to be small and weird, but still something, it can still be small and weird and something that people have a really good experience or that they have fun finding or is like a local kind of thing. And it can even grow into be something that's not just locally known. It could be known throughout California. It can be known, like I don't know what Catacombs is going to become, but like the possibility of things growing on a no basis, as in like people knowing about it, is still possible even if it's a small thing. You know, there are a lot of small things all over the country that don't have like hundreds of thousands of attendees that like hundreds of thousands of people do know about. So I always want it to be small though. That's kind of the number one.
Let's discuss about collaboration and community. What are the viewpoints that they introduce to your work, and do you think like the artist support network is enough? How do you meet them? How do you decide who you're gonna be collaborating with, other than convent?
Well, the convent is closed actually. I don't live there anymore. That was like a little while ago.
Why did it close? Just like
there's a whole story behind that. But yeah, it is closed. But the way that I meet most of the artists is just people I randomly meet at events or on the street, or I find them online. Like, I'm not even like aggressively searching for people. I tend to just ask people I know, like, do you have any art? Are you an artist? And that's kind of like, art is my whole life. Like, that's what I spend all my time doing and thinking about and curating. So like, it's pretty normal for me to have conversations on the daily with people regarding art and what kind of art they might do and what kind of art I do. Like, I'm constantly trying to self-promote myself and Catacombs And in doing that, I always ask other people what kind of art they're doing or what kind of events they hold or go to or things like that, because this is just my whole life. So I tend to just ask, just meet people, as in like I'll meet strangers and they'll end up being an artist at Catacombs, or I'll meet people at an event, or I'll meet someone mutually. Like, honestly, a lot of people do reach out to me and say that they have someone who might want to be involved. People do reach out to me personally, say they want to be involved. It's like it's from an array of sources.
Okay, and inevitable question, it's gonna be about tech.
Okay.
Because the city got tech focused. How it's gonna influence the future of the music, you think? And then I'll go to the other question after that.
So how is tech?
Yeah, how it's gonna like the whole technology. You're already using it. I'm already using it. So you're not like you're not doing just instruments or like, it's already here, but like even more, like especially with AI and like the producing new sounds and all songs.
Yeah.
Even like where you think it's going. Are you also like investing in learning AI?
Well, my experience with AI is that I find that like I have tried to use AI to help me do my art. I do use a specific software that helps with mastering called Ozone, Ozone Elements. And that's really helpful. Like, it's not perfect, but it does help. It does make music sound like slightly better. So there's that. But my experience with like the fundamentals of writing music, I can never really use AI to do that, and I have tried. I have tried to have AI help me write lyrics, for example, and every single time I can't use what it suggests, and I always end up doing it myself. And I also try to, I know that some people use AI to write music, like physical sounds or literal sounds, and I can't bring myself to do that. I think that I work in a very different mode of creation, where my brain just knows how to organize things in a specific way that just isn't really friendly to AI. And I find that I can be much more creative when I'm just completely uninfluenced by most tools and just like have a blank canvas. Like, one of the things that I like to tell people about creating good art is that you have to have as little distractions as possible. And that can mean a wide variety of things. That can mean that there needs to be as little distractions inside of your tools as possible, as in like they need to be very simple, they need to be easy to use, there needs to be not so much going on that you're distracted by using it like at all. And then also like having as little sensory input as possible. Like I remember when we were working on like the visuals for a video that we were making for Catacombs, and I gave someone an entire Pinterest board which had like a lot of different inspiration, a lot of different visual inspiration they could use to kind of like help figure out what it's going to look like. And I thought that like the more information the better, the more possibilities the better, the more inspiration the better. But they came back with like, I'm just really overwhelmed. Like, I see so much here and I don't know what to choose and there's too much going on. Like, I just need one photo and then I can work with that. And that's when I realized that like you need to have as little inspiration as possible. You need to have as little inspiration as possible. And I find that like my art is better when I simplify it immensely, and like that's just something that kind of happens across the board. And so when it comes to AI, like if you're relying on like so many different tools and trying to get them all to do one thing, it can really distract from your inner creativity and your ability to create. So I try not to use it for the most
It's
part.
overwhelming.
It's much easier to just focus on yourself and sit in a quiet place and be in a meditative state, be alone, make sure you have like very little sensory information coming through. Maybe like one idea, one cause for inspiration, one photo or one song that you heard that you liked, like the ending 10 seconds of, and then build something from scratch out of that. It's far more successful in my experience.
Personally, yeah, for your creation process, yeah. But like with everyone who haven't been that skilled in the area, will be joining just copying, using it? So like, do you think the competition will become harder? It's already hard. Do you think they will also like have a voice also in any field, you know, like whether it's movies, whether it's music, so many newbies that have no clue will try to compete. And do you think it's going to make things difficult for the real artists?
I mean, it depends on what your objective is. Like there is an economy of art, and there's always going to be an economy of art because people do consume art like they consume anything else. Like when you're listening to a song that you really like and you hear it and you're like, oh, I want to hear this again. I want to hear this a million times. I want to walk around really powerfully listening to this. Like suddenly you want to have it on you. It's like you bought a bracelet and you want to keep it on you and you want to use it until you get bored of it or you don't like it anymore and then give it away or throw it away or something. We do have a consumer-based economy of art, and that's always going to be true. And if you want to be a part of it, then that's great. But if you don't want to be a part of it, you don't have to be. Like you can see yourself as not succeeding if your art isn't being consumed at the level as everyone else's. But that doesn't make you an unsuccessful artist. That just makes you an unsuccessful product. So like people tend to tie those things together, that you're not successful unless you're a part of this economy of art.
Yeah.
But that's not true. You can still you can not like mass recognition is not necessarily, or mass recognition or consumption is not necessarily a recognition of your quality as an artist. In fact, in a lot of ways, it reflects your quality of art going down.
Like your authenticity is like,
because if you can affect, like, it is a beautiful thing to be able to affect a lot of people and have like an avenue to touch multiple hundreds of thousands of millions of people, possibly, but there's a very specific kind of idea and work which can do that, which is capable of doing that. And it's kind of like think of one food item, for example, that everyone on this earth likes and nobody doesn't like. I can honestly only think of one, and it's water. I mean, there's definitely others, but like hyper simplicity is what touches everybody, because there's very few things that are very niche that touch everybody. And honestly, I find the most gratification in creating something that is really niche, because something like water, you can drink it and you experience it, it's great, but something as complex that takes as many steps to create as like a beautiful sculpture that like takes so much time, takes maybe years to create, takes so many layers and materials and things, and it has all this deep meaning behind it that's like walked hundreds of years of generations of people, and someone experiences that, they might have an out-of-body experience just looking at it, just understanding all the time that went into it, all of the meaning behind it, all the history and ages that it lived through. That is a far deeper experience than maybe a glass of water. You know, it's I mean, I'm being very not incredibly literal, but like I guess you could compare like a massive beautiful sculpture to like one of those little sculptures you find at IKEA or something that you put on your shelf. Like it's like a lot of people are going to buy this, they're all going to like this, it's going to be everywhere, but we're not going to experience it on nearly as deep a level as we are something that is very niche, that is very specific to a very specific person. The intensity of experience goes down. So there's nothing wrong with any of these things. Like you can make things that have high intensity levels, things that have low intensity levels, whatever you want, whatever makes you happy, but it does not determine your success as an artist.
I will ask a very like personal point of view of mine as a question to you too. I personally consider being artist as a soul type, not personally, because I read Rollo May and his definition of an artist really spoke to me. Mm-hmm. So it's about like revolting, rebellious in a way, like not in a negative English way, but like kind of fighting against your for your beliefs. Right. Like having that strong soul type and like having an ideology as a cause anything. Like you need to have something to say, you know, something to mean. And like here, not just here, all over the world, people want to call themselves artists just because they're doing something with their hands, but not necessarily an idea behind it. And I'm having a hard time considering themselves as artists.
Yeah.
So where do you stand in that? Do you think like me, or do you think they're all trying their best and we should also like respect anyone who's trying to just do something?
You know, that is a very good question. I think that it's a little bit of a loaded question, I'll be honest, but it is a really good question. I haven't really thought about it myself, but I do have a lot of talks with people about what is art, like what counts as art, what counts as not art. And one of my friends who wrote an entire novel about this, he wrote an entire book about this, and he called it the Art Unification Theory. His name is Jake Raybeck, and he dissected this whole thing, and one of the key concepts that kept coming up was that art on a fundamental level is an expression of the human experience. So if you are creating something, and even if you're a preschooler and you're creating something out of clay, and you stab it because you're mad or something, and there's like a hole in it, and it's just like this mound of clay and there's a hole in it, that is an expression of the human experience.
If there's zero feeling and you just
there's feeling.
If you don't if you don't stab it and you just do what teacher says, if you're thinking about something else and you're just at the class, you're doing it anyway. Like you don't make anything pass to your product.
Well, I think that there's definitely different levels of expression, but the very fact that this tiny human creature is actually creating this, they're putting their human experience onto it no matter what. Even something as simple as like it being the shape of their hands, or like their fingerprints being embedded in it in some way, or like they shape it, and like it's never going to be exactly what the teacher made because the teacher made something that they made.
Okay, but just because they do it with their hands doesn't mean they give a meaning to it. In my opinion, it's just a product. Not necessarily everybody artists, but like at high school, let's say everybody takes the painting class. They all paint the same thing, but actually it's just like coding. It's just another class. You just do it with your hands. I would say that doesn't make you an artist, and I would like strongly argue with that, even though because they don't all put a feeling. Like I think it's just a type of being.
Well, it's like this specific definition of it being an expression of the human experience is just an opinion.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I really can say what art is. I think that on a fundamental level, it's just creation. Like we're all creationists, but like not in a religious sense, but just creationists in a different sense. But at the end of the day, it's really a personal opinion, and I agree with you. I think that there are like very microscopic pieces of expression that are inside of someone creating a sculpture that's like they're not really thinking about the meaning. There is a meaning behind it, but it's like they're not thinking about it. They're not going to put any effort into telling anyone what it means. But like there are microscopic pieces of human experience on that object just because they made it and they are human. But it is very different when you are intentionally being an artist and you are intentionally like making a sculpture and you're spending a lot of time on it and it has a very specific purpose and meaning and you're going to convey that and you're going to dedicate yourself to that. Like that I would consider that more of an artist. Not necessarily that the other person is not an artist. I think we are all artists, but someone with a lot of intention behind what they're doing is definitely far more of an artist.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about mental health.
Okay.
So how do you maintain yours with this social and economic new world and like that shift that we're going through?
Yeah, I mean, I struggled a lot with depression when I was much younger, and I went through a lot of really difficult experiences and have developed really effective coping mechanisms for my life. And by using, like, in a lot of ways, I'm really grateful that I suffered so much because I have all these wonderful coping mechanisms and I can be very functional. Like, basically no matter what happens, like, even just the other day, I was set to move into a new place. And as I was in my car driving over, I got a call from the landlord and they're like, you can't move in. And I was suddenly didn't have a house. There was an older version of me that would be very stressed out and very, very stressed out, but I was fine. I was like, I knew that I was going to be okay, and I knew that I was going to figure something out. I knew that I had people around me, and I was not worried, like, at all. So it really just, it comes with the concept of, or the hurdle of handling stress is really just a skill. And like you see it, people are trained as Navy SEALs to handle stress. And it's just like, it's a skill, and you learn it over time. And I have done a lot of self-work to be able to handle stress and to be able to manage my mental health. And I'm pretty good at it nowadays. Like it's pretty difficult for me to really like fall apart. And I'm pretty proud of that because I've come a long way, for sure. But like, I try to limit my social media intake. I very rarely will scroll through social media and take in a lot of other things. I try to just use it as a tool to communicate with people directly, or to promote my work, or to show people what I'm doing, because I think it's a very good way to do that. And to invite people to things that I'm doing, because the whole point of holding an event is for people to show up and enjoy it. So I like to use social media as much as I possibly can on an outwards basis, with one avenue, one direction of output. And I try not to take it in, because there have been periods where I have taken a lot in, and I feel a lot worse about myself. I compare my likes to other people's likes, and it's not good. It's not good for your health.
How many minutes do you think is average on a daily basis?
On social media?
Yeah.
I mean, as in like taking things in?
I don't know. I just like set a limit to 45 minutes, and as soon as it hits 45, it tells me that I already spent 45 on a daily basis.
That's really good.
I say, ignore, but at least I know at which time I get to that point.
Yeah, I should do that. I should definitely do that. I don't know. I mean, I want to say 45 minutes. I'm gonna positively think that I do 45 minutes. Yeah, let's just stick with that.
Okay. So my last questions: what lasting impact do you have to achieve through your work, and how do you wish to be remembered?
Oh, how I wish to remember. I don't think that far ahead.
That I will ask to everyone from now on, because I think it's important as a question. In case something happens to anyone, I will be like, on my podcast, they've told me how they want to be remembered. Here you go. That's my key question from that. Last one. So first, what lasting impact do you want to have through your work?
So, I mean, I've definitely done a lot of thought about this, because there was a period where I just made art for no reason, and I just made it, and I never had any intention of showing it to anybody. And I literally hid it. Like I would hide it from people and make sure they didn't see it, because it was like so personal to me. It was just for me. It was like just pure expression, and I wanted it to be mine and no one else's. And that was the whole point. But I transformed later in life for various reasons to want to share it, and I had to ask myself. I was suddenly sat down with the question, why? Like, what do you want people to experience? What is the point? What is the purpose? And I wanted to determine what that was, because I know that I can touch a lot of people, and it's kind of a terrifying thought, because I want to do it in a certain way. I don't want it to just touch people. I want it to be in a certain way. So I have had to ask myself this question a lot, and I've had multiple answers over time. At first, I wanted to make music because I wanted to make music that people had never heard anything like, that could really just be like a wow, what is that? How is this possible? What is this? I've never heard anything that sounded like this. I wanted to create something that was so new and so different that it could just be a shocking experience, and maybe even inspire other art and other music to be in kind of a similar way.
To encourage.
Yeah, encourage art that is, or encourage music that is just different than the music that we hear nowadays. So I wanted to create something that was like a wow. And then I moved forward to want to create something that made people feel something really specific, made them feel what I was feeling. And I wrote this song recently, which was regarding an eating disorder that I have. And I had never like taken the time to write a song about that, or even tell anybody. But I kind of like slowly moved into a stage of my life where I was comfortable telling people. And I wrote a song about it, which was just very literal and very raw. And I got a lot of really touched people coming to me about it. And I realized that this is another thing I want. I want to be able to share what I'm feeling and for other people to feel it and maybe learn something from it, maybe feel like they can relate and just
They don't feel alone.
Exactly that. Yeah. So that's another purpose that I want to work towards. And another one is that I always started out world building. Like, I never just wrote music. The whole idea wasn't just to make a pretty song or something. I wanted to add it to a whole world. I wanted to write a novel that goes with it, and an opera, and have a story, and have all these complex sounds that like happen at very specific moments in the music, just create a whole experience. And the point of that is it's kind of the same kind of concept as why people create video games. You want to immerse people. You want them to feel like they're in another world. So I want to make people feel like they're in another world, because that's a very pleasing, interesting, bizarre experience to just go somewhere. So that's another one. And then I think the last one would be to change how people make art. Like, not just make something that's maybe a little different, or make something that feels really good to experience, but something that directly inspires people to change how they see art, to change how they make art, and to change maybe what's normal. So I would like to see a world where people approach music not by listening to the things that they've already heard, or by copying the people who've really succeeded, but by looking at art and being like, what about this could be better? And what about this can I change? And to do that, as opposed to just like, I'm going to consume this, but to create a very artistically critical population or generation of people that are looking at art and like trying to make it really different, trying to make it better. And not just better, but also waking up to the tool that can be in expression and the power that
perceiving it properly.
Yeah, that, but also just like critically becoming a creator. So not just like being a critical person and going and criticizing other art, but like changing how you see art and making something, finding the motivation to make something that's really different, first of all, like as a simple way to put it. And then another thing would be there's one other thing. So I forgot the second point, but basically seeing how you can change things in the future. That's it.
How do you want to be remembered?
How do I want to be remembered? I don't know. I don't really think that far ahead. I mean, by who? I guess it really depends on by who.
Improvise now. Okay, so by us, and we will write an article about you on what should it say?
I guess a person who. This is a hard question. I think that a lot of people think that they know the answer, and they just never have the opportunity to actually answer it. So you're definitely asking me. How do I want to be remembered? I think I'd want to be remembered as someone who changed the way that people write music. Yeah, to be very specific. I think someone who changed the way that people write music, and I work in various different mediums, so I'm not just going to say music. I'm also a poet and a writer and a dancer and a vocalist and a lot of things. So I think and a painter. So I think just like in every medium that I work in, I want to be remembered as someone who was like the spark that started the flame. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. I will be at your next strange Tundra. I'm done.
I look forward to it.
I look more forward to it.
Yeah, I hope to see you there.
Okay.